Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader back with you again, Jersey First TV. We are in a new session in the Assembly in Trenton, and today we want to bring you one of those new members as we highlight the new legislators who will be working on our behalf. Assemblywoman Vicky Flynn, welcome to Jersey First TV.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for having me.
Happy to have you here. We want everyone to get to know you who didn't have that chance during the election. We're excited about this new year. We flipped a number of seats in the Assembly, which is historic, and hopefully we will continue that trend. But Vicky, your background now, you're a lawyer, a litigator,
Yes.
and you have some public service we're going to talk about in a minute because I think it's relevant. But what made you want to run? There are a lot of people who say to me, I'm thinking about running, or I would never run, or I might do that. So I'm always curious to figure out the mindset behind somebody who decides to throw their hat in the ring. So tell us about that.
I think there's a few influences I've had throughout my life, starting with when I was a child. My mother was a councilwoman. It wasn't just about her being a councilwoman. She did everything for the kids, for the seniors, and really put herself out there despite being a mom of 3 kids. She unfortunately passed away when I was 13. So during most, if not half, most of my life, and probably most of my younger brother and sister, she had cancer. But that didn't seem to deter her. So she was someone battling a very severe case of cancer. But she always found time to help the kids of the community and the seniors of the community to get things done. And making our town a better town, which she did. And she left a lasting impression in those years. Right now there's a senior center, and it was also the place we had a lot of youth group activities when I was growing up and summer rec programs. After she passed away, they named it after her because of that influence that she had. So I had a role model in my mother.
Yeah.
It also continued. I went to Seton Hall Law School, and I was already interested in public service. I have a poli-sci degree. I thought about going to Washington after graduating from Rutgers, but decided to stick on my path of practicing law.
Yeah.
But at Seton Hall Law School, which I think really does set it apart from some other schools, is that they really impressed upon us to give back to our communities. I had many teachers tell us that we had a gift by being a lawyer and getting a law degree, and that they strongly expected, they had high expectations for us, and they thought we had to give back to our communities.
Interesting.
So both in my life as growing up, and then in my initial steps in my professional career, I was really surrounded by people who influenced me to pursue public service in some way or shape or form.
And you wanted to focus on your community. You're in District 13 in Monmouth. So you started your law career and then eventually found yourself on the Board of Education in Homedale. Now, that's something that, you talked a lot about during the campaign and something you're proud of. Tell us about what you accomplished there.
So pre-pandemic, we were pretty excited about what we have accomplished in terms of curriculum, moving things forward. Career readiness was a big focus for our school board. And then we also, we have tremendous schools here in Homedale. We actually just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the first graduating class of Homedale High School. And there's such pride in our high school because of the tremendous, education you receive there. Its reputation is stellar. But the buildings weren't so stellar, nor was our middle school that leads into it. So this community passed a $40 million referendum to allow us, the board, to do a lot of improvements that were desperately needed in all the buildings. And we doled it out in terms of making sure to make those infrastructure improvements to support the academic mission of our schools, to support, programs like drama. We really wanted to focus on the arts as well as our athletic programs. So we really transformed those buildings. Our buildings and our facilities are used as soon as those lights go off for school, they go right back on for recreational services. So they are that community center for our students. Our local HYAA, the local athletic group, they run all their programs, and all of our gyms are probably booked today for some type of basketball activity. So it is something that really needed to be focused on. We did it, and we did it in such a way where we timed it that was the least tax impact possible. And based on what we went out to the community with, in the end, we got lower interest rates. We got lower everything, so that in my last year as a school board, we were able to deliver a tax cut to our community.
Nice, nice. And of course, you had a time you didn't realize, but to be prepared for the technological challenges of the pandemic, which is interesting. So 2018, I believe it was, you became president. Now, when that happened, when you look at that career specifically in the Board of Education, who was surrounding you and encouraging you? Where did you get your support from as a woman pushing into the Board of Education and then ultimately the president? What kind of support did you see around you?
Well, on the board, we had tremendous board members, mostly experienced board members who had dedicated a lot of their years and time to the board. But also we had tremendous, and I'll go to the female capacity, we had great female board members as well, who put in tremendous hours, tremendous times, and provided me that support I needed, because I really was a hands-on president in terms of communicating as much as I could for the board. I never wanted my board members to ever show up at a board meeting not knowing what they were voting on. Mm-hmm. So we created also a structure in terms of the week before we have board meetings once a month, but the week prior we do all of our committee meetings, so that there cannot be an agenda item or a presentation at that board meeting that hasn't gone through one of the committees.
Oh, what a novel idea. Can you tell Trenton about that?
Maybe I will, if they'll listen, but definitely.
Right.
Because, that would be the worst thing. Like, people use words like transparency, lack of informed, knowledge of things. I never wanted people to feel that way. So my first goal was to make sure my board members are always informed. And when they're walking around the street, or they're in the ShopRite, or they're at Homedale Park, we're all talking the same language, because we all have the same set of facts. And I think that makes them comfortable when they vote. Community, a feeling of trust to you. I mean, we were worried about the referendum, whether or not it would pass, and it passed the first time. It was a strong referendum in favor of supporting our educational needs. So I was lucky to have the strong women, not only on my board, but also around me. My friends are very supportive. And those were the same people. I've been reflecting about, how did I get here today?
Yeah.
Like, how did this all happen?
Right.
I've been reflecting on some stories that my kids are very involved in soccer. I have 3 girls. They all play. Through the years, I've met moms and dads from all different towns in our area outside of District 13. But I came to learn there was a number of women in District 13 who really became engaged as a result of the Murphy mandates and whatnot, that were reaching out to people within the county to say, we need more elected officials like Vicky Flynn. And they only knew me from me being on the sidelines as a soccer mom. I was a team manager, just always talking with them as to what we're doing in Homedale versus Fairhaven versus Rumson versus Little Silver. It's those connections that I've had that I've received a lot of support from. And for that, I'm thankful. I mean, and I also, Seton Hall Law School, thinking of that, I have a few Seton Hall alumni, both here in Homedale and within District 13. We're very supportive of one another, and that showed too during the election.
So at some point, there's a switch that flips at some point, and you say, I'm running. So bring us into that a little bit more detail. When you actually decided to step out for assembly, what were the factors that made you decide that? Was it an easy decision? Did you feel support from the community to do that? Who pushed you to do that? And how did that eventually come together?
I first had the support of the county committee, the Chairman Sean Golden, Christine Hanlon, and Tom Arnone. They're the head of the county Republican committee, and they have been following. I mean, I think because of my role in the Board of Ed, I really became more noticeable because we opened schools, we were able to flip into virtual learning pretty easily. So I think I got their attention through that, and also always being a supporter of the Republican Party. So it was them. Here in Homedale, I had the almost unanimous. There was one county committee person, but the rest of them all voted for me and chose me to represent them at the assembly. So that was a critical component, and as well as different county committee. So the first step and the support I received was at this local county committee level, was where people were very supportive of what I was proposing to do. It happened probably within 45 days.
Wow.
But I did have to also speak with, my law firm. You have to do all those things. So my husband, my law firm, my kids, things like that. But I think everyone understands what's going on in the state really requires people to kind of go away from the status quo and start moving in a different direction. So I think there was a lot of that. And then the groundswell from, I'll call them my soccer moms, that I had no idea were reaching out to people like Sean Golden or Jerry Schaffenberger or Declan saying, we need a mom in there. We need someone like Vicky Flynn. They didn't say Vicky in particular, but they said we need more people like that in these positions to hold people accountable and get things done.
So would you say that a large part of the steam behind you came from women supporting you? And do you think now, with everything that's gone on with the mandates and women standing up more and mothers really fighting for their children and for choices regarding their children in education and healthcare, is this trend continuing? And are we seeing the power of the woman again in a way that we haven't seen before?
Yes, we definitely are. And the other thing, it was just everything happened at once. Remember, this was also around the time when they were doing the marijuana bill,
right?
Where they were taking away parental notification requirements if your child was somehow found with marijuana or even alcohol. I was dealing with that on a parental school board level, as well as in my professional capacity. I do represent towns. I represent police departments. I developed very good relationship with the chiefs of police. They still reach out to me and they'll say, Vicky, is this true? So in two different capacities, both in my legal profession and my professional legal capacity, as well as on the board and then my personal capacity, this idea that the government was continuing to take away parental rights and infringe upon it was troubling. And it does need moms to stand up.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting during the primary, because besides having the women and the close women that supported me throughout my trajectory, there's also people like a Jerry Schaffenberger, Sean Golden, these men who support women to be in these positions. That can't be overlooked, because that's also very critical to get the right women in the right seats, is by having that type of support. And that was critical for me.
So are you going to give the GOP an A in that regard? It's interesting because I think people have different opinions. They wonder if we really are at that point where women really get supported within the party like they should be. It's your experience that we are in a good place with that?
As far as Monmouth, I could speak only on behalf of Monmouth County.
Right.
And I have spoken and said this to anyone who will listen. I do think Sean Golden, Christine Hanlon, and Tom Arnone, with what they accomplished this year, and the whole Republican organization of Monmouth County, they put a lot of women on that stage yesterday. And it can't be overlooked the amount of women in these local elections that they put in place.
Right.
If we don't have that support from that level, you're not going to see a change with women in these positions. But I give a lot of credit to them, because that's what I see, what they did in this election, that needs to be in the law field. It needs to replicate itself elsewhere. And I'm genuinely concerned that the pandemic has set back women in a lot of ways in the workforce.
In what ways, Vicky?
I just feel like we're reverting back to, the good news is we have work at home right now. Like that's something women in the legal field had to fight for, forever. And I think the lack of work family balance pushed a lot of women out of the field.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because I had the pleasure of knowing many women who are they're the smartest people I know. And I would hire them in a heartbeat, and they're not in these positions of leadership. It's a shame. It's a shame to the profession. It's a shame to society. So it's a shame that they felt like they had to make a choice that sets them back economically. It sets them back in their career. So, and I think I've had to make a lot of sacrifices to keep my trajectory to move forward in the legal field, and made a lot of difficult choices in doing so. But I do that for the women that come behind me, because I want them to have those opportunities.
Yeah, it definitely comes with sacrifice. There's really no way to say that differently as a woman trying to make an impact, right? And inspiration coming from your children, coming from your mother. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Let's look at Trenton now, because Monday was a crazy day in the last session of a bunch of bills. Some were shocking. Some came out of nowhere, some shenanigans there. And then we had Tuesday with this new Assembly and new Senate coming in. What is your hope for this next session? And do you have personally particular issues that you want to push, particular bills that you're looking to put together?
Well, yesterday was interesting. I was on the phone with Jerry and I said, what are we going to do about these, public health emergencies that Murphy just declares yet again to infringe upon the decision-making authority of local boards of ed? Right. What are we doing? So unfortunately, I think Murphy is dictating a lot of what I want to do.
Right.
I've reached out to Governor Murphy multiple times as a Board of Ed president, and I've asked him to please communicate with me on these issues. I want to help. What we did in Homedale, besides the referendum work. So after the pandemic, once the pandemic hit in April, we're saying, well, what are we going to do to open these schools?
Yeah.
There's no excuses. We were opening in September.
Right.
What do we need to do? And we put in place a tremendous amount of infrastructure improvements to mitigate the spread of the disease. Okay. So we can have schools open safely. The goal is to make sure kids feel safe in school as well as our employees. Right. And that was what we did. And I think we've accomplished that with great success. I don't see that model being replicated elsewhere. Right. And I personally reached out to Murphy because the governor, because he is in charge of so many schools that don't have, I don't think Homedale kids have a luxury of staying home either, but definitely these children that are in some of our at-risk communities, they need to be in school. Right. Special needs community, they should be in school. I couldn't believe we were having kids with autism at home.
Oh, tough stories. Oh, so tough, right?
Yes. And I think, we talk a lot about the social emotional learning that's required. We just set back all of these children's social emotional learning by years, and especially in a special needs community. And it's a sin. Yeah. And I did not see at the state level what I saw with me and my fellow board members in Homedale. How do we get these kids back to school? That's what anyone and everyone should have been talking about. And they weren't.
So Assemblywoman, there seems like there's something missing here, which is any coordination now between school districts. And maybe before there wasn't a need for it or foresight for it. But if you were able to do something successfully in one, why should another recreate the wheel? And with this much challenge, so that doesn't exist. How could we create that?
I'm going to advocate in favor of us doing that. It's if we run and we pay for a tremendous amount of state-run operated schools in the state, I'm going to propose bills that would ensure that those infrastructure improvements are made immediately. Yeah. I mean, that if the governor came out with an emergency order that said that, I would applaud him. Right. Because I think that's the public health emergency. I don't think the things that we're talking about now are the emergency. We need to figure out how do we get schools open and the economy. The economy is not, it's barely trudging along. Barely. And I see no measures being made to address that either.
No, spending is out of control, continues to be. The budget passed last summer was crazy. When you look at parents, because I look back at the election that you just won in November, and I feel like a theme there, is parental rights, really, and the voice of the parent. When you look at the down ballot wins, especially. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the parental issues, how do we address curriculum in schools where people are concerned about CRT, sometimes called SEL, other things? How do we address that? And all the way to choices that they can make for their children regarding vaccinations, regarding masks. It feels as though the parent was pushed to the side and they're demanding to come back. How will you help them feel represented?
First, I will sign on to the bills that my running mate, Jerry Schaffenberger, already have put together. He's planning on carrying over. They were allowed to carry over a certain amount of bills. That's one of them. And he's generously allowed me anything when it comes to parental rights on those issues. I'm right there. These issues about critical race theory or whatnot, I'm here to tell you there's a huge learning loss out there. And I think the only exercise being done by the Department of Education right now is how are you going to address the learning loss amongst literacy? There was a ton of kids who were in third grade when you shut down the schools. Yeah. Did anyone ever address that? We have all the data shows that if you don't learn to read by third grade, the remediation required thereafter is extensive. Wow. And so then you close down these schools for these third graders. And then did you ever address those 3 months of learning loss thereafter in fourth grade? No, because the schools were closed or they were going half day. So I think, Bailey, yes, you agree, right?
Absolutely.
Learn how to read. Um,
That's
so
a big issue, learning loss. I love that you're highlighting that because I really haven't heard anyone talk about that. I mean, they mentioned that it's a byproduct of everything these kids have been through, but when are we, so when do we address it? Another year goes by. I mean, we are so lagging in the development of an entire generation of kids.
yes, I mean, we're gonna hit a decade's worth of learning loss if we don't really start addressing it now. So, we need legislation that focuses on that. And if it has to be legislation to tell the Department of Education to do this, then I'm on it, because in Homedale, we have been measuring learning loss. We were able to get back in school full time, 5 days a week, all day by December of 2020. We were one of the first schools, and that was because of all the remediation. We started school that year in person. We had our special needs students in school 5 days a week, half day, but we had them in. But everything was half day. We went full day by December because we had finished all our infrastructure improvements.
Right.
We were like one of the first. There was no one doing that. So,
yeah.
that also allowed us to, the other thing we were able to do, we were able to start measuring learning loss. So because we had our kids in school to do so and to take tests. Right. So I think the Department of Ed should be looking at that stuff, and they're not.
Right. And I think it's a critical issue you're bringing up, and I want that to be something we follow up on with you and others. And I would hope that be maybe, something that you're pushing this year. I know Jersey First is concerned about it. We had a discussion about it not long ago. So we should explore it more. But I want to say congratulations to you. I know your dog is wanting your attention.
So sorry. I'm so sorry,
listen,
Elizabeth.
It's just fabulous. This is what we all working from home, dealing with all of that. It's part
maybe
of.
If I pick her up.
There you go. There you go. Is that a she?
It's a she. Yeah.
What's her name?
Bailey.
Bailey. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing is, like, having kids. We really got to get the kids in school, so that has to stop. And then the economy. And I think that's it. The problem, I think, in Trenton, what I notice is that there's no focused. It's not a focused intent to try to get through legislation. It's too scattered.
Yes, too many initiatives. We have some serious pressing issues. So how can people reach out to you? Have you set up your office yet? Do you have staff hired? Are you ready to go?
I am in the process of hiring staff. Jerry's legislative aide is helping me out a little bit too. But I'll be in Middletown on Route 35. Next to Jerry Schaffenberger's office. I don't have the address off the top of my head, but it's right past the post office building. I will have an email address, and they're setting that up, I think, as we speak. There's been a lot of emails about that today. But you can also find me at Vicky Flynn for NJ at gmail.com. Because I'd love to always hear from our constituents. The best part of running an election, quite honestly, is getting out there and talking to everyone. Jerry and I did a tremendous amount of walking. And I have to tell you, and I will tell my Democratic friends when they listen, if when we talk, when Jerry and I were walking during the general election, we really focused on houses of high propensity voters of Democrats and independents. We didn't talk to, we ran an election in the primary. Yeah. So we already did the Republican list, and Jerry's a ferocious walker. He walks all the time. And
so important.
It is. Yeah. And they were done. They're done with, we understand that there's a need to take safety measures, but we have to get this economy moving. We have to keep schools open. We have to get moving. And we cannot continue to send this message out that it's unsafe to go to school. Absolutely. I think everyone's losing sight of the fact that every time Governor Murphy says there's an emergency that requires me to do X with schools, what impact that has on students.
100%. We keep telling them to be afraid of their friends, of their teacher, afraid to take their mask down. We're done. You just said something. We're done. And I think we are all done. We have to find that path back. And, frankly, we need to heal the damage that we created. And that's an important point, I think, from this discussion that we've had. I'm going to let you go so you can tend to Bailey and get back to all of your other things you have to do. Congratulations on your win. We'll look forward to seeing you in the future and watching you focus on these issues. And for everyone listening, if you're in District 13, you'll be able to find Vicky. She just mentioned where. Assemblywoman. I got to call you Assemblywoman now. I can't say Vicky.
I can't get used to that either. Vicky's,
you'll have to get used. It's a mouthful, but you'll have to get used to it. So thank you for coming on so much. We will talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry. Thank you for being accommodating to Bailey too.
Oh, absolutely. We love dogs. It's all part of living in Jersey. So it's all good. All right. Thanks, Assemblywoman. To my audience, guys, we'll see you next